Welcome to today's show and tell, and today we're welcoming Michael, Tom and Tyler, and they're going to talk to us about a very exciting creative writing project or creative writing learning project that they have. So hi guys, who wants to start? Do you want to tell me a little bit about yourselves and about your project?
Sure. I guess I'll go first and then you guys can say hi too. I'm Michael. I have been teaching for decades, I guess more than 2 now. And I started using role-playing games during the pandemic to teach online. And I ended up building an entire writing program around online story game use. And after I'd kind of gotten it to a certain point, I wanted to share it with the world. And so I banged together a classroom approach. And that's when I met Tom and Tyler, who just happened to be 5th grade teachers looking for a program to help their kids learn to write. And I will toss it to them. Tom, do you want to
go? Sure. So I'm Tom. Hi. I am a 5th grade teacher. I've been an educator for 17 years now. And I'm one of the crazy ones that adopts all kinds of interesting ways to try to help kids and try and teach kids. And Tyler and I thought this year that we would bring our love of gaming into the classroom. We've been working together for 2 years now, and it kind of led us to Michael and into this unbelievable program. Tyler?
I'm Tyler. I've been teaching for my 9th year, and like Tom said,
digits.
I know.
That's it.
We've been trying to gamify our classroom, which has been a lot of fun. It's a lot different than what I've been doing in the past. And this year, we met Michael on Twitter, and it was just a crazy story of how we got connected. But we did, and it's been fantastic. Our kids have been loving this program. And the funny part is that Tom and I have never done role-playing games in the past. So
that was my favorite thing. That was my favorite thing when you guys told me that.
We were definitely a little nervous getting into it, but it's been a lot of fun.
Get this, their first story game ever, they each ran for a group of about 20 5th graders. They'd never played a role-playing game, never run a role-playing game. I had no idea. I thought, they talked about being gamers, and that's such an interesting term now, right? Because it can mean a lot of things. And, it can mean you play video games. It can mean you play board games. It can mean you play Magic the Gathering. It can mean a lot of things. And in this case, I was assuming because they had mentioned using the D&D curriculum, which I have my own feels about. I'm not, I think it's fine, but it doesn't do the job it needs to because it's not designed for teaching and learning. It's being used for, which is great, but it's not designed for the classroom. It doesn't have the standards and the academic skills built in, which is part of why I began my approach. So I assumed when they said that, turns out they had just run a couple after school sessions. And I think my favorite thing you said, Tyler, was when you were like, yeah, after doing Luna Uni in the classroom, we met back up with the D&D kids, and now they don't want to fight anymore. They just want to talk to all the different non-player characters and build a story. So it's turned into Luna Uni after school too. And I was like, yes. So that was a big win.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about Luna Uni then. So this is the name of the program.
Yeah, it's the name of the game.
It's the name of the game.
Yeah, and I'll share screen. So this is we just ran a Kickstarter and did all right, but there's much more coming. Tyler and Tom are helping me with what's called an implementation study. Once you do an implementation study, if you've got a full year, you can do an impact study, and if you've done an impact study, then you're official. So we're in the process of making this education research certified, if you will. It's a
and what does that what's the purpose of that? What does that give you when you become certified? Does that allow you to sort of offer your programming more widely?
Yes.
Cool.
Simply put, I don't know. I thought I found out, as an educator who's a veteran educator, it's been interesting learning about what it takes to bring a curriculum to a larger audience. And one of the sort of strange and sometimes a little upsetting things you learn is, well, you have to get grants, and you have to know education researchers. And then once you know education researchers, you have to get them into your classroom, and you have to get the right number of teachers. And then you have to do a full year study. And then it's sort of no wonder in the United States that individual teachers who might have lovely programs aren't able to bring them to a larger audience, but large corporations are able to fund, you know, sort of large scale curricular projects and sort of sell them to districts because they've got backing, research backing. So that's what we're hoping to do. Even though we're small, we're looking to get the research to show that what we do, you know, we can tell you qualitatively and with the students' scores and with their results what the program's capable of, but we need a larger scale, more statistically supported way to show what this program can do for school districts.
Okay.
So yeah, Luna Uni is a world. It's also based on the Stories RPG framework, which I built with Daniel Hines. There's a podcast to go with. It is a futuristic world in which humans leave Earth only to find that they are sort of the backwater last planet in a huge populated set of galaxies, and that these people who came before, called the progenitors, seeded life throughout the universe, but they're very mysterious. This is in a future that's kind of stable. It's boringly lovely. There's no war, there's no hunger, they've got sustainability figured out. Most of the core worlds are really just set up to work perfectly. And
it's
the players,
the Federation, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
The Federation of Planets. Let's
I
face
mean,
it.
without any stereotyped evil lurking on the edges of quote unquote.
Well, they have to go
space.
outside the Federation to look for trouble, don't they, in Star Trek?
But that's not where trouble comes from in this one. It comes from inside. So every generation, you're going to have some kids who don't want to stay at home and who want to start doing dangerous super science experiments in the basement and who want adventure. And they're the ones who are, if they cannot fit in on their core world, sent to Luna Uni, which is an entire moon terraformed into the universe's center for radical learning. So the players end up taking on the role of these, let's say madcap, ferocious. And these are, this is like a slideshow. Think of these like art placeholders. My artist is currently working on this. We do not have license for these. This is more like a collage. And kids are able to change these. So students are able to grab a slide. Their characters are defined by lines. And what's important about their characters is not some numerical measurement. Rather, it's what makes them interesting as people. So what's their drive? What's the downfall they struggle with? And once they've grabbed one of these slides and they've made themselves a loony, because that's everybody on Luna Uni is a loony, professors included. And we've got some sample drives and downfalls, all of these focused on cultivating a sense of story. And that's where we start. This is about telling a story together. It's not about winning or losing. This is about writing great stories. So with that intent and purpose, it changes the feel of a classroom. It's interesting watching the way people who are sort of traditional role players, when they ask questions about the game, they often ask questions that don't apply. They'll be like, well, what if the kid decides they have an outcome that lets them win? And I'm like, well, they won't. And they look at me, well, why not? Because it's not about winning. It's about what's interesting. They're more likely to make trouble than they are to just solve the problem, because the trouble will be more fun for the story. So,
and even this, Michael, if I can jump in real quick,
no, please,
I just
please jump in.
Want to point out, just even those character slides, Sarah, have been fascinating for our kids. And we've used those to tie directly into some of the read alouds that Tyler and I do every single year, and we've used them for character analysis. And what we've seen from our fifth graders is that they've been able to look at characters in a story in a way that they've never done in years prior, and that I've ever seen in my years as an educator, because they're starting to really understand a character and how an author creates a character, what their drive is, what their downfall is, and all of those little pieces. And they get excited. They get excited to find the drive or the downfall or the quirk or the power or the whatever behind that character. And that's been a really fun thing. So when we have read aloud, they have these sheets right in front of them They draw a character when we meet a new character. They write down their drive or their downfall. We discuss what makes a drive. And like I said, I've just never seen the connection between writing and reading like this at this level. And it just came from making a character like you would in a game.
Yeah,
so it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it sounds, it's like my experience of playing sort of Powered by the Apocalypse games. And your first session is always making a character. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't even get any further than that. There's no story being told. It's just everybody having real fun, kind of getting into their character.
Characters are story.
Characters really rock.
Characters are story.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, that's the best, right? Tyler, you were saying with Amari and the Knight Brothers, I know you got into some really sort of advanced meta-analysis of characters using quotes from the book. And they really had, you know, we're using this as an analytical tool to help kids really analyze lit. You want to write a character essay, fill out a character sheet using quotes for lines. And all of a sudden you've got the skeleton of a nonfiction character analysis of an author's work. Do you want to say more about that, Tyler? You've put this together.
It was kind of phenomenal. We were reading the book, and this is Amari and the Knight Brothers by B.B. Alston, and we were about halfway through, and most of the students said Amari's drive was finding her brother who went missing. And then as we got further in the book, we really start seeing that Amari wants to not always be known as her brother's little sister. And then students were just like, wait, so her drive now is she wants to be known for herself and just, you know, and we had a great conversation about how wanting to find her brother is an external goal that she has. Whereas, you know, wanting to be herself and known, you know, stand out for who she is more of an internal drive that she had. So when we got to that point of like seeing the difference between the two, the students really started understanding that for themselves. And since the beginning, students go in and they change their drive and a lot of those lines that Michael was showing, and just to make their character more interesting.
And more true to who they've become during the live sessions. We can talk a little bit about how y'all have it set up. I can talk about how I teach with the game, both in after school programs and in my tutoring programs. And we can talk a little bit about how live sessions also reinforce standards. One of the key elements of all of this is the game itself comes along with standards aligned lesson plans, pacing guides. We've been working on rubrics. Kids are getting very good at both analyzing their own work to work on their own writing and revising, because the way in which characters build in this game is entirely based on the stories they write. So kids are writing stories, and based on those stories and the share and the read aloud that they do, they get story points to purchase new lines for their character, new special abilities, and also to use for re-rolls in moments of high tension during live sessions. And Tom and Tyler just got in. I just set up their first drama clock for them. The drama clock is where we get them to really blow their story points by ramping up the drama. And so there's this very natural and intuitive and built-in way that writing is the core. Storytelling is the core, whether it's live storytelling or whether it's writing of the game. A huge part of the game, more than half, is them writing together, reading their stuff together, getting amped about their stories, riffing off each other's stories, and building this world, which, you know, has several lore seeds to begin with, but is really theirs to create as they move forward in the game.
So I'm getting the impression from what you're saying then that there's different aspects or different ways of playing or different modes of play. Is that correct?
Do you guys want to talk about live and lore sessions in your classes, or do you want me to talk about it?
I'd be happy to talk. So you've heard Michael say live and lore. That's kind of what we toggle back and forth between week after week, depending on where our kids are at and what they need, of course, and what they're excited about. But the lore sessions are a chance for students to develop their stories. So they can write about the previous live session. from their point of view, which is always really fun to see, because everybody's point of view is unique, right? And so your stories are very different, which is awesome. Or they can choose to write a little bit more. So, for instance, one of the first live sessions is going to Luna Uni and finding your dorm. And so the kids go and we do this huge live session together. And when we come back the next week, we start a lore, and that lore session can be, how did it go? Or, all right, you found your dorm. Now what? Go explore the campus, or who's your roommate, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, there were a couple of scenes the kids wrote where they did really good little cute dorm scenes where it was like they found their room and then it was like, who's your roommate? And they had like little snack and game moments of like, here's how they wrote so many great. I mean, this is the thing that makes it so delightful.
Yeah. And they invent things too, which is really neat. So, they're in the room and they come up with an idea of what they want for a video game system. And we encourage them to really push the envelope, right? You're on Luna Uni. You're not on Earth. You're in this place. Like, what is it going to be like? And so they invent the name, they invent how it works, what it is. And the kids get really excited about drawing them and really creating this thing from scratch. We've had some people even use 3D design to design little models of what their creation that they've made is. Tyler, you had a kid, wasn't it like Drops or something for his video game? Was that what it was?
I'm not quite sure about the video game. We had one where it was like a VR.
That's what it was.
Something destruction apocalypse thing, just because they wanted to play it there because it's just so abnormal to what goes on the core worlds. So they're like, oh, at Luna Uni, we play this crazy game where life isn't perfect. So they came up with that whole game by themselves, which was awesome.
Very meta to have a game within the game.
Right.
Yeah.
But then they do sports. They do a bunch of stuff that they add to like the lore, which could be used in their writing later on. So one of my students, he had a hat on of his favorite, I can't remember the sports game, but his favorite team of that sport. So then he wrote a whole slide about what that sport is, even though most people won't read that slide. There's some lore about that slide somewhere, so that the student can keep writing about that sport and adding it into future stories.
Yeah, so to clarify, lore sessions tend to be, they begin with kids reading aloud. Everybody claps like crazy, and then they choose how many story points they believe they deserve. And it's a simple 1 through 5 scale. 1 means I bailed. This isn't much. 2 means I kind of half-weighed it. 3 is it's a solid story. 4 is I'm pushing. 5 I always say is the holy monkeys. That's the like, behold, I have done this. This is my story. Yep. So, and the key here is, and I emphasize this a lot with my students, and I know Tyler and Tom do with theirs. This is cultivating self-awareness. So I often laugh at the term gamify because I think it's ridiculous. School is a game. It already has points. It already has arbitrary rules. It has referees. It's just a really badly designed one where the players' needs and wants aren't taken into consideration. So it's not designed for kids, right? And as a result, there's a lot of them who are like, this game is dumb. I quit. And then we're all like, why? It's really important. I'm like, no, because you made it wrong. That's why. So the key here is cultivating the kids' ability to self-assess, right? And this is something that I've noticed in classrooms for years and years and years. You'll get these kids who will walk into your room. They've been straight A students their entire career. And they'll look at you and say, how do I get an A? And you'll say, what do you want to learn? And they'll go, what? They have no ability to assess their own material because they haven't got a sense of their own achievement. So the key with this is nobody else can give you this score. Only you can decide how well you think you performed.
Yeah.
And you don't find kids overscoring themselves. You find the opposite. They underscore. And this lovely bonding thing happens where, they'll read their story. The other kids will cheer wildly and they'll go, I'll take 2 points. And the other kids will be like, what the heck? No, dude, that's like 5. And they'll all yell at them until they give themselves more points. So it's a wonderful bonding experience where students are both celebrated for their ideas, because other kids will get excited, and also celebrated for an academic skill in an unfeigned way. This is not everyone clap for the presentation by so-and-so. This is our game. This is our world. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. The first time you get a kid to gasp, the kids all gasp because something happened in one kid's story. Every kid in the room is like, oh, I'm going hard next time. And when they write their next story, and then it's all kept here in the slide deck. The slide deck is a living document for each group, and they're all reading each other's stories and riffing off of them. So this becomes a play space that belongs to students.
So
instead of this, please.
You're talking about the deck. So is that like if they were screenwriters, that would be like the Bible for the series?
It's the slide deck. Yes. And that's ultimately they get to craft a novella by the end of the year that consists of all of their short stories that kind of paint a picture of their Luna Uni and exactly the world that they have created. Cause it's always different. Like, I don't think they eat pasudoodles in yours. Do they, Tom? Or is that Tyler's? Who eats pasudoodles? One of your teams is like obsessed with this. Yeah. Okay. That's
it's really fun to watch what they come up with. And it's just this freedom that I don't think they had before in traditional writing stuff. Right. So a little background, I guess, on fifth grade here in Maine is that we do personal narratives, opinion pieces. Tyler, what am I missing? What's the third one?
Expository.
Thank you, sir. And something expository. Typically, that's teach those three things, send your kids to the next grade level. Obviously, conventions, yada, yada, yada. And this is very much more narrative stuff. Focus on dialogue, focus on setting the scene, focus on showing, not telling about a character or about something. And it's writing that is brand new for our kids, but just seems to make sense. The way it's crafted makes sense. And I think there's a couple things at play there. And so listening, Michael, to what you were saying, when the kids go crazy, and they put their hands up in the air and we're like, 1, 2, 3, go. And everybody just goes nuts until we kind of do the band teacher, turn it off kind of a thing. And the kids love it. And I think the reason that is so special to them, obviously it feels good to get the applause, but you're no longer just writing for a teacher.
Yep.
You're writing for your class.
Yeah.
You're telling a story together with 19 other people. And so the 19 other people matter to you and their story matters to you. And so when you're writing for more than just the old guy, myself, at the front of the room, then the storytelling matters more than it did before. The other part of that is, Michael, you said about the gamification stuff. Yep. School is a game, right? But we had, like Tyler and I kind of joked about this. We just got done with parent-teacher conferences. And one of the things that the parents said to us quite regularly was that they loved Luna Uni because it was writing that met kids' needs in 2023. So it did everything that a kid would want education to be right now. Right. So yes, it's more like just an obvious gamification as opposed to it's already there. Make your character. It's fun. It's out there. It's a little, it's in space. It's all these other things that kids really enjoy.
Well, so, I like to say it centers student voice and agency. That's really what you're talking about, Tom. And I think one of the things I've said a lot, I was at South by Southwest talking about this. And one thing that I always think when I'm in a room full of educators is we say we want student voice and agency a lot. But honestly, as individual teachers, we're often terrified to offer it because we're worried,
what they might do with it.
Teachers are overworked. They're underpaid, undersupported. There's a reason that they want to try to find some sort of stability, right? A pacing for their work. But the truth is, until learning belongs to you, it's never important to you. And every single person I know who's an expert at anything is an expert at it precisely because they have a sense of ownership. I built this. This is what I figured out. I learned this. Other people don't know this, so I have a reason to explain it to them. Let me tell you what I know, right? And then we're confused when students in earlier grades find school less than compelling. We haven't offered them ownership. They have no stake in their own learning. They're not participants. They're not owners. They're being told what to do. And nobody likes a minimum wage jobs pushing a mop, regardless of what that mop might look like, metaphorically speaking. Nobody likes them. Do y'all want to talk about live scenes real quick? Because we've mentioned them a couple times, but we haven't really given the structure. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can talk about this.
Right on. I'll share a screen and you can like talk through what happens.
Yeah.
That's Dr. Danger.
So on Friday, or it's been Fridays for us, Michael creates a scene, like the beginning of a scene, that kind of prompts what the live session is going to be. And he shares that with us, and then we take on the role as the game master, or the teller.
Yeah.
Which again, we've never done before, which was quite the adventure. And so what we do in our classes is we get everyone sitting in a circle. We've been fish bowling the first few, having a few students from each crew in the middle. And we really just start off by reading this and then saying, let's explore the scene. We've had some really awesome scenes. And Michael really put some work into these, that the students feel like they're right there. And students start thinking about, what do we see? What do we hear? What do we smell? And me and Tom really push the five senses. And we're sitting there taking notes, because I think the best part of this was they create it, and they'll describe everything, and I just take what they're saying and add it, so I don't have to make up everything. There was one where there was this creature had explosive poos, and I had no idea what this was.
That sounds like my cat.
Yeah, the Combustor Brat. That's with Dr. Dendrite in the conservatory. It sounds like a Clue game.
And it's like our students' favorite scene. It was so much fun, but going into it, I'm like, I have no idea what this thing's going to look like. So we played it off where the students got the file and the description. I had the students tell me what that looks like. And it was awesome.
They made a move to, they were like, what do we do? And I always give at least 5 different, and we call these moves, but they are not moves in the PBTA sense that they have a specific outcome. Yeah. The mechanics for this is very simple. They get to leverage lines from their character sheet and say, here's what I want to do, and here are the things about my character that would make me good at doing it. Okay. And very often downfall is included there. And that'll get them up to 3 6-sided dice. And when they roll them, the highest roll determines the outcome. If they've got a 6, then they have a triumph. If they've got a 4 to 5, it's a triumph, but there's a trouble. And if they've got a 1 through 3, there's trouble. And it didn't go the way they wanted. And these are just suggestions, but the goal here is always create inspiration, but not remove the ability to ideate, right? Yeah. So the kids have a lot of ideas here, but what Tyler did was such a pro move. And this is another reason I'm a firm believer in collaborative storytelling. When they get those outcomes, as a teller or as a teacher, you want to share the room with your students. So you need to say to them, okay, so what do you think should happen? You got a triumph and a trouble. What should we do? What would be a cool trouble? What's the triumph you want to have happen? And in this case, you had the kid trying to figure it out. They were like, okay, we got to find out where the creature is hiding. And these combustible poops, it's very prolific. So it's hiding everywhere and dropping little literal bombs that you have to sort of locate. And they said, well, we got to find the file. Let's go find the file on this creature so we know all about it. And when they triumphed, Tyler just looked at them and he goes, yeah, you got the file. You open it up. What does it say? And then he was wonderful. Like, I don't know, you described, how the kids all, collaboratively built this creature with what? You said they had fish lips, and
it was an anglerfish
out
of like that didn't need water. It had a big booty and big buck teeth there. They created it was absolutely awesome. But like Michael said, they go through moves and then the triumphs and troubles. troubles, both Tom and I, we put the agency a lot on the students. Like, all right, what do you think's going to happen if this fails? And then they throw out a bunch of ideas. In my head, I'm using what they used in their exploring the scene plus their ideas about what could go wrong, and I create a story. But I'm not creating myself, which is, I think, my biggest fear going into this about the live scenes. And once Tom and I started learning that the students could do all of this storytelling, we keep going with that. But the biggest thing that we push is, no matter what, whatever we do, it's going to be for the bettering the story. So we make a move. Is that going to be a good story, or is that just to win the game? And all the time it goes to, let's write a good story. Let's tell a good story. So we just keep going back to that during our live sessions. Is there anything else I'm missing about the live?
That sounds like an awesome renewable energy source, exploding poo.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun too.
They've got sustainably figured out.
They bring these things back into their stories too. So like even just this last week, I had a kid, we work on figurative language a lot. And I had a kid who said, and I'll mess it up, but it was something along the lines of shaking like a combustive rat poo before it explodes, or something like that. Was the sentence they brought back all the way from.
That's awesome.
This was so many weeks ago too, right? So, and they just remembered it and brought it back and added it into their session for the week. It was really cool.
And I think one of my favorite parts is the lore sessions and the live sessions just connect. And Michael does a great job looking at our student stories and adding things from those stories into the scenes that he creates. One of my students wrote a story about this other character that decided to go to a different school because the other school is more adventurous, and his name was Astronova. And then the next live, Astronova ended up in the same location as us, and the student that made it was like, what? It was like, just seeing it in the live session was just awesome, because she created this character in her storytelling and it was used into it. Our class made an NPC on the first day named Janitor Twinkles, and he's an ongoing character that keeps coming into every single live session we do. And so like the connections between their own writing, the live sessions, is just, it's awesome.
Yeah, one of my goals in creating this was to create a system that was easy for teachers to pick up and run, because I don't know, I wrote this in a recent blog post about Luna Uni and all the work Tyler and Tom have been doing. But I think asking folks to use D&D to teach a room full of, 20, 30 kids is a bit like asking someone to cook a meal for 30 folks with a sword. If you're a sword master and you're a master chef, you could probably do it. But if you're lacking either of those skills, someone's going to end up hurt. And so, this is a game designed to be easy to run and to be intuitive for both kids and for the teachers. And the tools that I'm creating are really designed to help folks do what I do. So incorporating those characters, that's also part of, the layout of all the teacher's guide that I'm building. This is part of the process. We funded a short run for Luna Uni, and there will be more to come. But one of the things that was on offer was a teacher's guide. And so what I've been doing is building the tools that Tyler and Tom need as they need them. So it's a collaborative process, and really working on learning from them what makes the best sense to them in the classroom. Because again, I already know how to wield a sword. So that's the gamer part, right? And I also happen to know how to cook. They know how to cook. How do I teach them to use the sword? And what are the pieces of the sword that are useful in the room? And how can I make that sword maybe more of a knife? To that end, the live scenes actually, and this is a piece we didn't mention, they are actually teaching the kids story structure. So they do every session, they start with what's called a hook, right? They read aloud an exciting, scene setting moment. And then there's explore scene where they get to ask questions and describe things. And flesh. Am I lagging? Everybody's frozen.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh. Am I back or? Not
Yes,
yet?
you're back. Might want
Oh,
to
okay,
go.
okay.
You might want to go back a couple of minutes.
I will. I'll go back a couple minutes. So yeah, the live sessions themselves are designed to emphasize story structure. So there's first a read aloud, which sets the scene, usually accompanied by a picture. Then there's a phase we call exploring the scene, where the teller gets to do some describing and the players get to ask some questions and sort of consider what they want to use to flesh the scene out.
Mm-hmm.
And then once everybody's ready, there's making a move. This is the moment where you do something to try to affect the outcome of the scene, to try to change the momentum of the story. And then triumphs and troubles, where you decide what happens as a result of your move and find out how things wind up. This is actually based on Kisho Tenketsu, the four-act East Asian cinema story structure. It's a very old structure, but it's 4 phases. So they measure up very directly to plot lines, right? So the hook is where you introduce or set the scene. Show is where you develop that scene, you build it out, you add detail, and you add depth. And then there's a twist. And I love this much more than the rising conflict thing, because it's all focused on conflict. You don't need conflict, you just need surprise. You don't even need surprise, you just need people. But the twist allows you for that surprising wait, but. And then the resolution, what happens as a result. And Tyler and Tom can talk a little bit about, how playing through a live and then learning about Kisho Tenketsu after having played a live helped their students frame the stories that they were telling and also notice that structure in the stories they were reading in class.
Mm.
You guys want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. For us, a lot of what we've been doing with writing, traditionally through the years is beginning, middle, end. And so, identify that beginning, identify that middle, identify that end. And that's been kind of it as far as like the explanation of it. This was a way to look at writing differently than personally I had ever done before. And it was kind of neat because in 5th grade, we have a lot of kids who are very into anime. And this is a style that is used in a lot of anime. And so when we introduced it, the kids were like, and then we actually showed an anime clip that I had found online, Tyler and I had found online, and the kids instantly gravitated towards it. And I'll go back to Amari again. When we read together as a class, they're able to identify now the key in the show in the chapter, within the chapters, which is really cool. And even sometimes there's 2 sets of it within just one chapter, depending on how the author has written that chapter, and the kids can call it out. And then when something happens, when that twist happens in the chapter, everybody will know exactly what happened. So that's the 10. And then as soon as it wraps up, they can call it out by name. It's really pretty cool. Tyler?
Yeah, and I think in their own writing, they've really understood the again, I'm not the best at pronouncing this, but the show, the developing of characters, and Michael did a great job creating videos for us to show students about how you can do that through dialogue. And students have just grasped onto these skills that Michael's helping us teach, like so much that they're like writing full slides of just dialogue, and without saying she said or they said, it was always, she whispered through grinning teeth, right? To show that the character is angry instead of just, they said this and move on. So using all of that, they really have just developed their stories so that they're building characters. And like I said, Michael uses, or even we use these characters throughout all of our live sessions, which is pretty awesome.
One thing I did want to ask is when do the kids do the writing? Is it homework?
So we we don't do it at home all the time. It's actually kind of funny. We do 30 minutes of writing during the day,
Okay.
but we've had some snow days. We get a lot of snow in Maine, and when they go home, I get, emails from parents. Hey, kids want to write Looney Uni. Is that okay? I'm like, absolutely. So they'll spend the whole snow day doing Looney Uni. I bet there's students doing it over break right now. During February break, we had students writing. So I'm assuming some of them are probably writing right now as well.
So
They
this
go
is the
home, they
thing-
create NPCs. It's just been awesome. I've never seen students actually want to write before.
That's the
I
thing
had a
that
kid go for February vacation. They went to Florida. And when they came back, they brought back their journal that was filled. There were pages filled. I was like, weren't you in Florida at Disney? And they were like, yeah, but in my downtime, I just did some Looney Uni stuff. Like,
That's brilliant.
hey, that's awesome.
That's so good.
I mean, I can't tell you how much every time they say it, my heart bursts, because when you create a thing, you don't know if it's just you. I've been teaching for a long time. I know what I'm doing. This is my baby. I built it. I wanted to share, because, I've had kids. I have kids. They stay on. We have a 2-hour class. We do an hour of writing, an hour of play, and then they stay on for the next 2 hours writing together and commenting on each other's slides. And then they create their own slide decks and write their own worlds and stories completely independently of the class. They own it. It's theirs, right? They're writing because they love it, not because somebody's telling them or because there's some arbitrary grade hung on it. And I never knew whether I would be able to create the structures to help other teachers be able to do what I was, I was like, this is genius. Maybe it's just me. And Tyler and Tom, unfortunately, they're rock stars. So I don't know if this is going to work for everybody. But they're not me. And they're having successes that are absolutely exactly what I've seen. And it's very powerful. It's very powerful to see kids owning an academic skill, not doing it because they've been told, but being excited to do it because it's theirs.
Yeah. And I think one of the best parts of Looney Uni is it really meets the students where they're at in their writing skills. So students that are, my higher students, they're taking off. They're literally just going off into their, their creative world. And then the students that need a little bit more structure, they have it because they're seeing other students writing all the time. Michael told a story about, being like, no, you deserve a 5. That happened in my class. The first reading we ever did, one of my higher students shared, and she's like, oh, I think I did a 2. And the rest of the class said, no, it's a 5. And, she's like, okay, maybe a 4. And right after she did that, the rest of the students all were like, okay, I need to get going. And they all just turned and they all just started working on their writing, even stronger than they were before, because they're seeing other students write. And then to differentiate, we give challenge points, which I don't know if we've talked about yet, but
No.
I have a chart in my on Google Docs where I will challenge each student for an extra story point, something that they should be working on. So whether it's adding dialogue or capitalizing all your letters, or that need to be capitalized,
All of them?
Punctuation,
shouting in writing.
Every
Right.
last letter.
Everything's they'll just change their font with that. But I mean, it's phenomenal. And even I have a few students that are ML, not English learners, and they do it in Portuguese, but they have the same structure, and then we translate it into English. We read it out loud and we're like, does that make sense? And we fix it together. But it's available for everyone.
You told us about that one kid who their first story was like Kisho Tenketsu plot outline, their first writing English, which, that one made my day. The built-in differentiation, you've also got some ND kids, yes? Who have a different way, neurodivergent kids who are really just suddenly writing. I saw that feedback from the parent of the one kid who had been crying about writing and was now excited. I was thrilled. Do you guys
That
wanna
was in
tell
my
story?
room.
Yeah.
And he, I mean, beginning of the year, personal narrative, it couldn't do it. I mean, it just, for all sorts of reasons, just hit him the wrong way, right? He was struggling in so many ways. Then we started with Luna Uni, and when he made a character who was him but wasn't him, all of a sudden it was completely accessible.
Mm.
Because when he was writing, he wasn't worried
Writing about himself.
Yes, it was,
Yeah.
and it was unlocking a door in such a cool way that his mom could not stop at conferences about how she's never seen him like this with writing. This is the first time in his life that he's been this comfortable and this excited to actually write.
Wow.
And it's awesome to see. And it's because it's not you, but it is you. So you get to choose how you want to do it. And he loves it. And actually, he's the one who wrote the figurative language about the combusted rat poo. And it just like from where we started to where we are now is two entirely different worlds. It's amazing to watch.
I don't know, just hearing that, like, thank you. Sorry, I get a kind of way every time. Differentiation is built into the system. The structure of a scene is the structure of a narrative. The structure of a character is what matters for a story, not some sort of war game that's, focused on numbers. But the social emotional stuff is really, I don't know. Any teacher will tell you that the most important thing and the most difficult thing as a teacher, the thing that you have to focus on the most, is kids can't learn if they can't trust. If they don't feel comfortable in their own skin in a room, there's never going to be learning. This idea that somehow fun is opposed to learning, like the current definition of fun is playful, connected flow. That's the definition of the state you want to be in
when
if
you're
you want
learning.
to master a topic.
Yeah.
And so this framework makes the celebration of academic skills something kids do peer to peer. And that's a kind of reward that any kid will perform for. Grades are arbitrary, they're abstract, and unless they're directly attached to a parent's affection, which sometimes they are, sadly, they won't matter much to kids. But having a room full of your peers cheer or gasp or laugh when your story is read out loud, that's absolutely priceless. Any kid will perform for that. That's why athletes will bust their humps in order to get into a game, doing things they don't want to do otherwise, because on the field, they've felt that partnership and membership in a team. And then that ability to be a fictional self, that's the kind of formative play you want. I mean, I often say personal narratives, to me, I think they're almost offensive. And I know that's a risky stance to take, but let me explain. I'm 44. And if you want me to write a thoughtful, vulnerable, honest story about my life in which I reveal things about who I am by talking about a moment of my life, I'm going to tell you no, because it's none of your business.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a lot of emotional skills you're asking a 10-year-old for, right? Like you're 10, 11 years old and you're like, I want you to profoundly consider how you've matured and who you are now. What are you doing? I mean, that's not asking them to write. That's asking them for an entirely different set of skills that not only haven't
that's asking them to
develop,
go into therapy.
Well, yes. And the lovely thing, every writing teacher will tell you this. This is one of the powers of writing, right? Is it does allow you a form of therapy. You are investigating the self, right? And the self's encountering the world. How does that work, right? And that's a power of writing. But allow the kids the fictional remove. Allow them the agency to choose how and when they discuss and process what's important to them. Because 2 or 3 stories in, that character who seems like a goofy robot is going to start talking about their brother or their issues with their dad who made them. And that's where the kid is going to be processing their life through the written word, which is what a master does. But let them choose the pace and let them develop at that pace. help them build the academic skill before you force them into the emotional ones, and let them choose the pacing of their emotional development.
And I can add to that too, Michael, just like just this past week. So we have a student in my class whose character, when he wrote his backstory, his family and his planet were attacked by a creature known that he called the Sabers. And the Sabers came after his town, and his family was able to save him and send him off, and so he got rescued, sort of like a Superman kind of a thing, right? But so the Sabers kind of portray themselves as this bad guy, quote unquote, in his story, in his backstory. Well, we get to this planet last week in our live session that is about to be destroyed. The World Seeder is basically awakened, and the planet itself is about to be destroyed, and all of the descendants.
It's a sleeping world. One of the mysteries is, how did the progenitors seed the universe with life? And they find this world that's emitting a progenitor signal. Turns out it's a slumbering world seeder, which is this enormous creature that swam between the stars, emitting bacteria, fungi, and all these other spores to seed life on the various worlds. But it's about to wake up, and there's life on its surface now. And if it wakes, all the life on its surface is going to float away into space, lose its atmosphere, and be destroyed. So they've got this tension between how do we help this creature and make sure that we're not, killing it or not waking it up. It needs to wake up. And how do we save what's on the surface of this world, because that life doesn't deserve, one of the principles of this entire universe is life is sacred, right? So we are all descended from the progenitors. We're not unalike, we're alike in that we're all from the same source. So sorry, I wanted to give that framing because you were like, there's a sleeping world seeder, and I was like, oh man, we're dropping lore. Like, yeah, I gotta back up. My bad.
I forget that not everybody lives in this world that you and Tyler and I live in. I apologize.
It's true.
So when we did our explore the week before, when we started our explore session, and we kind of just looked around the planet and figured some things out, his crew discovered that one of the original Sabers actually had a home on this planet, and they kind of interacted with it, and they went through this whole entire thing. Well, the next week when things start to break apart, he actually says to his crew, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we have to go save that Saber. And I know what it's done to my family, and I know what it's done to me, but we've got to keep it safe. And it was just like,
come on, dude.
Like he's already an extremely empathetic kid, but this was just this unbelievable moment for him to really tie that into storytelling, tie it into his backstory. And I couldn't help but think of it in terms of an author. I mean, this is what an author would do, to go back to that original story, right? There's that whole entire flow. It was awesome. And that's the SEL stuff. That's the emotional connection that these kids are generating through this writing.
It reminds me of an episode of Doctor Who, in the new sort of like lot of Doctor Who, where there's Great Britain has ended up on the back of a star whale somehow.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm going to share screen because that whale is in my slideshow. Doctor Who is absolutely a touch point. Yes. Starship Britain. This is
Starship Britain, that's it.
Yeah.
So star whale, and you have to decide, you have to vote on whether or not you're going to release the star whale or going to forget that this poor star whale is being tortured.
Well, and that's the thing, is they're torturing the star whale to get it to move through space.
Yeah.
What's discovered in the end was the star whale was actually arrived at the apocalyptic end of the world to save all the crying children, because it's the last of its kind, and it heard the cries of kids in space. And so they didn't need to torture it ever. They could have just been riding on its back symbiotically the whole time. Very lovely way of, all of the storytelling we do, and every one of my games, but especially for the classroom, one of the real principles that I operate on.
I'm such a nerd.
Yes, we all are. It's all good. Well, thank you, by the way. I feel seen as a fellow nerd. I always say, Doctor Who is a wonderful touch point for me for storytelling for kids, because there's drama, there's danger, there's all sorts of character development, but everything comes back down to misunderstandings and misalignment of values or culture. There's always a way to solve. It's zany, it's big, it's messy, it's crazy, it's wonderful. The rules all go out the window at some point, but the bottom line is the one thing that maintains every story, that keeps it grounded, is it's grounded in character, right? It's grounded in who people are, and understanding people solves problems. This is another reason I'm not the biggest fan. You know, I love everybody who's using games in the classroom. Whatever game works for you, do it. But if I were to suggest a game to someone who wants to teach using games, there are a lot of games that focus on and center around violence. And, you know, you look at a game like Dungeons and Dragons, and the core of the game is roll to hit. Most of characters' abilities center around the ability to hurt things. And most of the climactic moments in a D&D story, you know, in terms of how the adventures are built, not in terms of how people tell those stories. Because people will often say, well, that's not how I play. And I say, great, but that's the game. You are making a wonderful game of your own that you've superimposed on top of this structure. But if someone who did not know the game were to begin playing it, the game's about war. And I wanted a game about understanding and connection and affection, not about hurting things.
To be fair, those gelatinous cubes asked for it though. But
I mean, you know what? The gelatinous cube has its own life cycle, and I don't think it's up to me. It's cleaning the dungeon. Like, it's taking out all.
That's true.
Ecosystem, and you're gonna break in and murder all the poor critters who are just living their own business down there.
It
like,
dissolved
come on now.
my shoes.
You just wanted to get a meal. It's your fault for running into it. You know what? It didn't come into your house and start complaining about you messing. Just saying. That mentality though, right? Even in, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's monsters, right? We're gonna go get loot. It's capitalist too, right? We're gonna get more stuff. In this game, gear is only a part of your character if it's important to the story. So if you have a piece of gear that becomes alive,
I'm only ever really
it has to be
interested in
significant.
loot. I only ever really like the loot if it's magical and I have to go and find out what it does.
But that's it, right? Like, loot is such a huge space in D&D, right? It's such a huge part of the game's ethos. We're getting stuff, right? And then we're powering up so that we can kill more stuff, so that we can power up and get more stuff. And I'm like, ooh, okay. And we wonder why we have issues with capitalism and colonialism.
Yeah, true.
Oh. But yeah, so this is a game made for learning. You know, for me as a parent and as a teacher, I was like, I need a setting that encourages wildness, zaniness, and creativity, but also empathy and care and connectivity and collaboration. And so Luna Uni is one of many settings that I've created, but it's my favorite at the moment because it feels in so many ways like both the most zany and also the most warm. It's very affectionate.
To speak on that collaboration piece too, Michael, those Friday live sessions are unbelievable for our kids. In our particular district, we have this thing called 21st Century Standards. And our 21st Century Standards are one of my favorite things to have on our report card because it justifies teaching what we know we should be teaching, to have it on the report card. And it's communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity are the four big ones. And so that's what a live session is. That's an entire live session are those four standards minimum. I mean, there's a million other standards that you're covering as well. But in that particular instance, I mean, the first thing you do is you create the world you're on, you explore. So there's your creativity. And then you work together as a team, not only to solve whatever the 10 happens to be and to find a solution to it, but also to write a great story. And so more creativity comes in there. You have to think critically about how you're going to apply your traits to the story itself in order to get the dice, in order to be able to roll. So those live sessions just hit so many standards for our kids. And of course they love them because they're a gaming live session. And so our last live session, Tyler and I both hit 2 hours with our kids and just doing the live session the entire time. No one got squirrely. No one needed a break. I mean, we both looked up at the clock and we both were like, it's 2:30. We got to figure out what to do because our day was almost over. And it was incredible. And it
Tell
hit
me you
so
got the
many-
shout outs when you came back, because the
I was
shout
just
outs are the
gonna-
best way to wrap.
I was just
Do
gonna
shout outs
say
at the
that.
end of live sessions and lore. Go ahead.
I know. I was just gonna say the best part of a live session is at the end. The story's completely done. Where we take a breath and we're like, all right, who wants to shout out somebody for what they did today? And like our last one, we did a drama clock, which Michael was talking about earlier, and it gets to points where students were sharing the story points that they earned from their writing and their own assessment to help other students do rerolls. I had one girl give up 24 of her points to another student so that he could get double triumph. And the first thing he did, shout out, I want to thank her for giving me all those story points. I will get them back for you. And
that's really nice.
Last week, or because that was a couple weeks ago, the last 4 days he was working so hard, and every single time he's always like, guys, I need to finish the story because I need to give her points back. And then it's just like, oh, I love when this student, he had this great idea, and maybe they said that because he doesn't usually always offer ideas. So the shout outs is by far my favorite part of the whole thing, because they acknowledge each other, and it kind of goes back to the SEL and even the 21st century learning, all those targets of communicating with each other and acknowledging each other. It's real powerful to end the day with shout outs.
Excellent. So I'm aware we've been talking for over an hour now, which is great. But I think probably I should wrap it up now. So where can we find out more? Where can we access Luna Uni?
So Luna Uni is still up on Kickstarter, and I'm happy to send along the link. We're currently finishing up all of the bits and bobs. My artist now is being paid much more for a bunch more art, which is really exciting. And so there's going to be a PDF of the game that you can print and play with anyone. And that's the game alone. You can play it at home. You can play it with a bunch of friends. Works fine. There'll be the digital toolkit, which you can use to play online with folks anywhere in the world. And I have. You can also get the teacher's guide. And the teacher's guide is the third piece. And that has all the pacing guides, the advice on how to roll things out, the rubrics, the advice on how to assess, all the good bits and bobs that any teacher needs to put it into the classroom. And all of that's going to be done by end of July, hopefully, maybe beginning of July if I get really lucky and really push myself. And right now you can look up Luna Uni on Kickstarter, and there's a follow along button, because the Kickstarter may have ended, but I'm going to, of course, once it's finished, allow everyone to purchase a copy if they'd like. And that gives you the license to use it in your own classroom. And next year, I'm looking for playtesters for a year-long impact study. So after the impact study, hopefully we'll be talking to districts about getting this into some larger frames. And then in the meantime, if you want to look us up, I'm luckoflegends.com. You can find my classes and my blogs about games and design and education there. Also storiesrpg.com. You can listen to story arcs using this same system. And there are some play-at-home games that go with that. If you'd like to check that out, that's storiesrpg.com, and that's a podcast. And Tom and Tyler are on Twitter, but do you guys have websites and stuff too? the
Tom's
shaking of
muted.
the...
Yeah, no, I have like my teacher website, which I probably should start putting a whole section of Luna Uni in there, but nope, just Twitter.
So what I'll do then, if you share all of those links that you talked about with me, then I can put them underneath this video. My cat's joining in now. I'll put this underneath the video and on the page in Ludagogy.
Lovely. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, we also have a Discord, and I'll give the link out for the Discord. You're welcome to the Discord. We are on there all the time, babbling in the background at each other on our little Doctors of Disaster channel, but happy to talk with anybody in the public channels who has any questions at all. We'd love to talk about this stuff if you can't tell.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming along to talk about it. And I'm sure lots of people will be really, really interested. And yeah, I guess with the play testing, you're looking for play testers in the US, or are
No,
you
actually,
interested in people in other parts of the world?
it doesn't matter where you are. These standards, I use the Common Core standards, but this goes for the international standards. I mean, it hits all the things teachers all know. Like you can change standards, but they're all the same standards. You're looking for critical thinking, creativity, academic mastery, social emotional skills. We're all looking for the same things. So I would love to work with folks in other countries. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I shall make sure I mention that underneath the video as well. So thank you guys so much for coming along. It's been really, really interesting. And
thank you.
yeah, I will definitely be downloading the print and play and having a go myself. So
all right. I'll send you some of the copies of the older ones so you can kick it around if you like.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you very much for coming to Show and Tell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Cool.
Thank you, Sarah.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.